going to be funny because we're kind of tired. What ways did you measure your progress when you started?
Don't really hear or see any other ways that people make progress. Are there any progress trackers that you would recommend to avoid?
I think it's a really slippery slope to go down. If there's anything to avoid, it would be that. Like you're about to cry.
That's the cutest thing ever. That shows it's nothing to do with how you're actually training.
Thumbs.
What would you say is a big misconception of a good workout?
Naturally, people are inclined to think, oh, it must be a good thing, when it's not.
Let's be delusional and everything will work out.
Is that how we live our lives anyway?
Yeah.
Why are we so out of breath? What have we done?
Don't touch me.
Don't give me your germs.
Shanice. You're moving a lot like a rat.
Look how massive this water bottle is. Can we just...
Look at her new purchase. You should show them your apron.
Oh, Abby got me an apron when she went on holiday.
Because I'm so cute.
Because I cook all the time.
Yeah, she cooks for me. Not because I can't cook, but just because she cooks better. Shut up.
Wake up, wake up, wake up! Anyway, this is going to be funny because we're kind of tired and it always is funny about
Oh, yeah.
Because we care less when we're
You
tired.
get to witness the most honest versions of us.
Yeah.
we
So we're not
lie.
normally on. Because we lie!
I'm joking.
Have we had enough fun?
Yeah. Time to get down to business.
We are back with another podcast.
And today we're going to be talking about how you can tell if you've actually made progress.
Yeah. So to start off this episode, like most of them, we Googled the definition of progress.
Of course.
So a Google definition of progress is a forward or onward motion towards a destination.
It's the idea that you are moving in a positive direction towards what you're trying to achieve.
Absolutely. And I think in terms of the gym, this applies because people measure progress differently and this also changes over time.
Yes. I think it's a really nice topic that we can shed a lot of light on.
And there's no better way than talking from our own perspectives on this.
Tell me.
No.
I don't think I will. So my first question to you is, in what ways did you track your progress when you started training?
Thinking back to this is so strange because I feel like it's changed so much. When I first was tracking my progress, I think I was measuring specifically what I looked like. So I did take progress photos at that period, which I'm glad I did because it is a good way, I think, still of measuring your progress. But yes, it was very visually focused. And I think I wasn't paying enough attention to my form and execution of the exercises I was doing. So I probably would have made a lot more progress had I been measuring it towards those kind of goals.
So it was very aesthetically driven.
Yeah, I would say so more at the start. Although my aim was to improve my health and fitness, I think I was being naive to the fact that I was placing a lot of emphasis on how I look and how that's changing.
Because I guess, especially if you're new to the fitness industry, you don't really hear or see any other ways that people make progress. I feel like there's so much emphasis in society on the only way that you can tell that you've made progress and that you're moving in the right direction is if you look different.
Yeah.
And yeah, that is a part of it, but I think there are other parts that are just as important. I think your performance in the gym, I think your mental well-being, I think personally just your relationships in life and with yourself especially are really good indicators of your progress and how well you're doing.
Absolutely. Like your sense of routine and well-being every single day is what really counts.
Exactly.
So it's not something that is spoken widely enough about, I don't believe. Yeah. Maybe more now than it used to be, at least when I started. Or maybe that's what I was choosing to expose myself to, were the physical photos of people before and after.
That's the thing, and that's what so many people shed light on. That's where all the emphasis goes, is this is what I did look like, this is what I look like now. Like there's no in between, there's nothing else added. It's
very easy for our minds to believe what we see. So I think that's why it's so easy to be drawn into those before and after photos. And while there's nothing to say that that isn't a valid form of progress, it's not the only form of progress. And it doesn't I think, focus enough on what's really important, like keeping safe in the gym when you're working out, not compromising your form because you want to lift more weight and that's more important.
Yeah.
That was also where I used to measure my progress, is how much weight am I lifting?
Yeah. That is a big one, because that is, I do believe, very much driven through the ego. Not that you shouldn't care about what you're lifting, or that it's not important, because of course it is. It's a great achievement if you can lift a certain amount of weight, or to lift any weight. But when you solely focus on what you're lifting, everything else seems to go out the window. Your form, your health, your resting, your nutrition, nothing matters except the weight that you're lifting over that bar. And if that's not going to drive you to injury, I don't really know what will.
Yeah. I don't know why that's so important to us to do. I guess it's just that sense of empowerment.
Yeah, it's a status, I believe. I'll admit it, I do sometimes. I mean, I don't ego lift. I will never lift more than I think I can, because I'd rather not break my back. But there will be times where I might not feel like going as heavy, but there's a big group of guys in the gym, or I just feel a bit shitty and I want to kind of give myself an uplift.
Yeah.
So I'll be like, right, let's just throw on the extra 20s. And
She squats a lot. What's your max on squats?
I've repped 100.
Yeah. I repped 100. Can we just appreciate that? But when you rep 100, you don't have the safeties on. Oh.
Yeah, I don't.
You're like, I don't even know what it is. I can't be bothered. I can rep 100, but I can't be bothered to move the little safeties up.
Because it's so much effort to take the things out. I just leave them where they are. I have done it before where I just didn't have them on.
I remember when I made you put them on.
Yeah, you did.
So I was thinking that is a lot. And you dropped it that day.
Yeah. I remember once I was lifting 90 and my mate was spotting me and she stood behind me and I said, stand back, because if I don't catch it, I'm going to throw it.
Oh no.
So she stood back but not far enough, and I got to the bottom and I went, okay, I'm going to drop it. And she stood closer to me, so I threw it back and it landed on her thigh.
No!
She had the fattest bruise ever. And I felt so bad.
I'm glad I wasn't there.
Yeah, you would have killed me. She hit me over the head with a bar. Yeah, it's great to lift a lot of weight, but don't let it be a sacrifice. Don't sacrifice your form or your health or anything else, really, just to lift more weight.
Yeah, you will set yourself further back if you cause injury to yourself. That takes a really long time to recover from.
Yeah.
Even experienced lifters will still be doing rehabilitation if they've ever had an injury, because it does take that much to get back to, and I'm not sure if you ever really do go back to how you were before the injury.
Not without that caution. I don't believe.
Yeah.
Just touching on what you originally said, so how the aesthetics was the first marker of your progress. I think that's really interesting, and it does touch on things we've spoken about previously. I think that was one of the biggest things we spoke about in the first episode, was what got us started and our motivation. And we did say how we looked was the biggest thing. I think that is probably a very common thing.
We live in a day and age of social media.
Yeah.
And so it's very influential in that you're visually seeing what people are doing all the time. So that is going to be absorbed into your mind. Why is that so creepy?
No, you're right. It's a lot harder to show online how your mentality has improved or how your routine has improved, because nobody knows you. So it's a lot easier to compare just photos, because there's no depth to it. It's just shallow. It's just there.
Yeah, it's also easy to attach your own story to a photo. And I think that's sometimes an issue as well, is where you think, if I look like this, then my life is going to then be this way, whatever that means to you. And it doesn't always turn out that way. So same question to you. In what ways did you measure your progress when you started?
Mine was very similar to yours. Mine was through the way my body looked. Purely looking in the mirror was my form of progress, if I could see a noticeable change. And looking back, that probably wasn't the healthiest. I do bang on about progress pictures, and I do still believe in them. I believe it is very good to take photos of yourself, especially if you don't like them, to be honest. I think that's the best part.
That's interesting. Why do you say that?
That's usually the reason people don't like the idea and they avoid them is because they take the photo, they don't like what they see, so they instantly disregard it. And I get that, because it's not nice to look at, and it questions your self-worth and your esteem, and it makes sense. But I think the worse the progress photo, the better, because it means when you come back, the bigger the change and the prouder you can be of yourself.
Yeah.
And as you said before, which I really liked, was it's making that commitment to yourself that you are going to stick to it because you're going to come back to it.
Absolutely.
And I really liked when you said that. I think that's so true. So that was my form of progress, was progress pictures and just looking at myself in the mirror. It's not bad, but I think, as we've said, there are many other aspects in which you can monitor your progress in the gym. And the way you look is most definitely the shallowest, because it's the easiest. It doesn't require a lot. And there are ways that you can look different, and it might not even be from the gym. A huge part is going to be your diet.
Yeah, so there's somewhat of a bias to looking at yourself in the mirror and using that as a metric of progress.
Yeah, your brain will try to see whatever you're thinking. The idea of your brain is to affirm your thoughts. So whatever you're thinking, your brain will try and detect. So if you're looking at yourself and you think, oh my God, I haven't made that much progress, I've only been to the gym twice this week, even though both of those sessions were very effective, when you look in the mirror, you're going to think, I haven't changed, I haven't done anything, I should just stop. And that's not because you're not doing anything right, it's because you're telling yourself that you don't look good, you're telling yourself that nothing's working, so you might as well just stop. The power of your thoughts is one of the biggest parts. So what you actually do in the gym is kind of pointless compared to your thoughts, because if you don't control the way you think about yourself, then training is pointless.
That's a really, really good,
in my opinion,
quote there of yours. I think what you're speaking to is the effectiveness of progress measures.
Yeah.
So it sounds as though you started in a way that probably wasn't the most effective way of measuring your progress, or at least not the only way. It feels like it was very isolated at that time of beginning your journey, that you were looking in the mirror and using that as your only metric.
And again, remember, you're not even just, personally, I wasn't just comparing myself to what I'd looked like previously. I was comparing myself to strangers on the internet who have a completely different genetic composition, completely different diet, completely different lifestyle.
Right.
There's no comparison in it. It's ridiculous when you think about it, but at the same time, you're so caught up in your head, and it's just such an easy measure to look at. It's almost inevitable a little bit. So that's why I bang on about the thoughts. It's all about the way you think about yourself. No matter how well you train or how hard you're trying, if you're telling yourself that what you're doing isn't enough and you don't like that person, everything you're doing just goes out the window.
You will believe what you tell yourself. It's really important how you speak to yourself.
Yeah.
That's true. And what you're exposing yourself to is inevitably what you will take on, what you will believe.
Yeah.
That will shape your perspective. That will shape your perception of yourself and your hard work, regardless of the logistics. So you can be going to the gym 5 days a week and really pushing yourself on every single occasion. And still believe the worst in yourself, because that's how you're talking to yourself.
And that shows it's nothing to do with how you're actually training at all.
Yeah.
So my biggest piece of advice to anybody who feels like this is something that they can maybe relate to or something they've heard of is focus on your thoughts before anything. Master your thoughts. Just speak nicely to yourself. It's simple as speak to yourself the way to speak to a loved one. Because, you should love yourself.
There is nothing to lose in being kind or showing kindness, whether that's to yourself or other people.
And even if you don't 100% believe it, the more you say it, the more you'll believe it.
I think there's a quote that fits quite well with this. You should treat yourself as if you were the person you love the most. So it's the idea of reincarnation somewhat.
Okay.
So say you're the person, and do not get big-headed about this, say if you're the person I love the most in this life.
Guys, you hear this?
And then we both died and we were both reincarnated and I became you because you were the person I loved the most.
Okay. I love that.
Yeah.
That's such a nice... That's so cute.
So the idea is that you want to treat yourself as though you are the person you love the most in your last life. Because that's the person you chose to be in your next one.
That's so wholesome.
You look like you're about to cry.
That's the cutest thing ever. And that's why That makes me so sad that people dislike themselves and are mean to themselves.
Yeah, it's really horrible. It's really disheartening. And I think that things are set up to be that way. So it is important to take a step back sometimes and question the world that you live in and why it's structured in the way that it is.
Yeah.
And think actually, very simply, what is making me feel good right now? Like, what am I creating for myself that I'm enjoying?
Not only what you're enjoying right now, but what you'll be thankful for in the future.
Absolutely. I think the problem is it's very hard to imagine what you don't know through experience.
Yeah.
So you have to be brave enough, I suppose, to go for the experience and push yourself outside of what you know. So you do have to do something that you haven't before to find a new answer.
Definitely. If you want to experience something you've never done before, you're going to have to do something you've never done before.
Yeah, exactly.
I've got another question for you.
Oh, have you?
I do.
Oh, very nice.
Well, are there any progress trackers that you would recommend to avoid or you would stay clear of? And why?
Ooh, good one. Good one.
I can't click, so it doesn't work.
You can't click. Do it again.
That's with 3 fingers, though. I can't.
You can't.
No.
How can't you do that? Do you know what clicking is?
What?
The finger hitting the bone of your thumb, like that. I think you've got really straight thumbs.
I think it's because I've got sweaty hands.
Yeah, maybe.
Like, feel that.
Ugh, every time. I suppose maybe what we're touching on in terms of how we started measuring our progress. I think comparing yourself against somebody else is a really bad way. I think being inspired by people is good. There was a firewoman I was watching the other day on Instagram. She's amazing. She's absolutely incredible and can clearly lift loads of weight and do loads of activities.
Yeah.
Very fast paced. I'm sure that's pretty self-explanatory if you're a firefighter. I'm not going to compare my progress to hers. I'm not the same as her. I do not have the same job and demands or body genetic makeup as her. I think it's a really slippery slope to go down if you're going to start comparing your progress compared to what somebody else is doing. That's just no way to be. There's no way you can win with it. So I'd say if there's anything to avoid, it would be that.
And I would agree on that. I think something that I found very interesting is quite a lot of guys who are trying to get into the gym or have started going to the gym, and I talk to, a lot of them bring up the most iconic ones. Chris Bumstead, David, what's his name?
I was going to say David Lloyd. Definitely not.
I'm going to look him up because I want to get his name. Him.
I
David
recognise
Lade.
him.
David Lade.
Yeah.
I knew his name was David.
Bodybuilder, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think quite a lot of guys I've spoken to, the main people they tend to compare themselves to are people like Chris Bumstead, David Lade, and there are quite a few others, but they're the main 2 that I can think of.
Okay.
Who are quite well known in the fitness industry, seen as very successful because of their bodies, their physiques are insane. And a lot of them will sit and go, I'm going to start lifting weights and I want to look like them. And that's not to say that you can never look like them. But the fact is, you actually might never be able to. And that's not trying to say, it's because they will take steroids, you should take steroids. But it's because, again, your genetic makeup is different. Your lifestyles are different. Your diet is different. Unless you're going to copy them to a T. And even then, that might not be enough. Because of your DNA. And that's why it's great to have inspiration and to have a goal which you kind of want to look like, but you need to recognise that that's a good inspiration and that's something nice to keep in mind, but that shouldn't be your end goal and that should not be what you religiously kind of stick to. You need to navigate off onto your own path because you could be even better than them. Absolutely.
And that is a really good point that you make, is you're taking away from the beauty of your own journey and your own unique progress.
Because you're so busy trying to mirror somebody else's. Absolutely. Somebody that you don't even know. Somebody that could, I'm not saying they are, but could be a complete fraud. You look on the internet at some people, it could be photoshopped, it might not be real.
Absolutely. And it's so bizarre, isn't it? Even now us saying it, it seems so clear and obvious. But it's a trap that people fall into all the time. But it's the way our human minds are inclined to be is negative, I think.
Yeah.
And
it's true, yeah.
believe what you see as well, rather than logic. Yeah, we're kind of pitted against each other these days, I think, in terms of comparison. So it's always ingrained now, indirectly, subtly, that we are to compare ourselves. We're constantly exposed by the magnitude of people out there online, influencers, non-influencers.
Yeah.
You've got dating apps now where everything's so transitional, and it just shows you the sheer amount of people that exist that aren't you.
Yeah.
It's really hard not to compare yourself in today's world.
Yeah.
So
no, I think that's a really important piece of advice, and that is something I agree with. I think you definitely should avoid that at all costs.
Yeah. So other than comparing yourself, what would you say is a form of progress either to avoid or that isn't the most constructive?
There are a few. I think one of the biggest ones that is quite controversial is stepping on the scales.
Yes.
When I train people, obviously they weigh themselves and it's a form of measurement, tracking their progress, but I make sure that when they do, it's a very specific time. So for example, it will only be they'll weigh themselves once a week, and it will be at the exact same time and the exact same day. The reason is because weight isn't the most reliable source for you to monitor your progress, because anything that's a metric, anything that is a number, as we've spoken about before, gets into your head. Just like we spoke about with Instagram followers, just like we spoke about with near enough everything, calories.
Yeah.
It can become very toxic, this relationship with numbers. And again, how much you weigh doesn't really define much.
Yeah.
All it defines is the amount of force within your body. It doesn't tell you how healthy you are. It doesn't tell you how much of that is muscle mass, how much of that is fat mass, how much of that is fat-free mass. It doesn't really tell you anything in that sense. And other than that, it can fluctuate so easily. You could drink a glass of water and it will change.
Yeah.
You eat a meal and it will change. If you're a woman, which part of the menstrual cycle you're on will have an impact. What you've eaten that day, the last time you did exercise, what you're wearing. I could go on and on and on, but there's so many variables that come into play. So to just step on the scales constantly, you are going to keep seeing different results because there's so many factors flying around. That's why I keep it very strict, so that the variables are limited.
Absolutely. I think the only way it's perhaps maybe somewhat effective is over time.
Yes.
And even then, as you're saying, it's very dependent upon very specific things in that moment on that day when you step on the scales, as you're saying.
I just don't think it's the most reliable, and I just think that there are other measures that are better.
Absolutely. What's interesting is how we associate the scales with our fitness. It's in cartoons, I think, a lot of the time. It's an imagery that we've adopted over a long period of time, and we associate that with our level of fitness and what we look like. It's interesting. And I'll tell you something, I have never in my entire fitness journey used it as a metric of my progress or measuring anything. I've never used it to measure my own personal progress because of exactly what you're saying, is that it means different things, at least to me. And so I don't want to start negatively impacting myself, my mindset,
exactly,
based on what numbers show on that scale.
Because again, as we've gone back to, it goes to your thoughts, and that's what the numbers affect. It doesn't affect your body, it affects your thoughts, and your thoughts affect how you perceive your body. It's a little chain. But I think that's really important, and I think the idea of not using the scales can be beneficial. So it's just something to consider. There are other methods out there, as we've said. So, on the same kind of note, what would you say is a big misconception of a good workout?
The most immediate thing I can think of is sweat.
Okay, why'd you say that?
Because anytime I speak to someone at the gym, especially someone who's maybe just starting out and they've only been a few times, they'll show how much they've been sweating, and that's clearly a sign to them that they've had a really good workout. And that is not to take anything away from how hard they've worked, but I don't think it's a good measure of a good workout. I think sweat just shows that your body's dehydrated from being at an increased temperature, and so you need to drink more.
Yeah, I think it can show that you've worked intensely because you then raised your body temperature, but that doesn't mean you trained harder than somebody that might have done the exact same thing but just sweated less.
Absolutely.
So, also it can be very dangerous because it can cause you to become very dehydrated. If you get fixated on that and you're trying to sweat more, the likelihood of you dehydrating is a lot quicker.
Yeah.
Especially if you're not drinking a lot of water alongside when you're training. And that's why it's so important. Have a bottle of water on you when you train, because the idea is you need to replenish everything that's coming out of your body back into your body.
Absolutely.
And that's not just water in your sweat. That includes electrolytes, that includes salts, and all these important things that your body needs to function the way it does. So I think that you're bang on.
Yeah. What you say as well about working really hard to see the sweat, I think you're only going to make yourself feel more and more fatigued. And that's not necessarily a sign of a good workout. You need energy to support you throughout that workout. While yes, that does deplete towards the end, you still need it. You can't be completely run down, and that's very dangerous too, in terms of, well, in the worst cases, fainting in the gym. That does happen.
Yeah,
and
it's very common.
Yeah, another thing with sweat is what you're wearing. So I don't find I sweat a lot. I don't think you sweat a lot either, because we wear quite tightly fitted clothes and we're quite free because we are getting hot. I think it's appropriate to wear things that suit the raise in body temperature.
Yeah.
You're going to be far more comfortable that way.
If you're training in a tracksuit.
Yeah, I mean, I see people in thick hoodies at the gym.
I can think of someone very specific. Even if they were hot, they would keep jump on the whole workout.
Yeah.
Because to them that showed that they're working harder. And long story short, the amount you sweat and the amount of calories you burn have absolutely no correlation. Nothing. So you're just making yourself suffer.
Yeah, it's literally that. You're just making yourself uncomfortable, and you are not going to enjoy yourself, and you need to be enjoying what you're doing. You're absolutely right with that one. And yeah, I think it's very interesting how people associate sweat. You've had a good workout because you're sweating loads. It's sort of a thing that we've associated with working out. Naturally, people are inclined to think, oh, it must be a good thing that I'm sweating loads. Yeah. When it's not. Yeah. The same question goes for you then. What is a common misconception of what makes a good workout?
I think your point of sweat was really a really big one that I would have probably said. I think pain as well. Pain. No pain, no gain. As a phrase you'll hear a lot, and I hear it all the time.
Yeah.
And there's a difference between aching because you've put your muscles through an intense workout and genuinely being in pain because you've overdone it.
Yes.
And I like to think it's very easy to differentiate the two, but I think especially to those who might not be so familiar with consistent training, it could easily be confused. Yeah. And the chances of driving yourself into injury is high. Absolutely.
It's maybe linked somewhat to what we were saying before about trying to lift more weight. Maybe that's what's attached to it, is the idea that you're putting yourself through more pain and you're making more gains that way. And it's really dangerous to fall down that trap, because if you hurt yourself, as we've already said, you will just set yourself back further than maybe where you even started. Yeah, definitely. Have you ever experienced this yourself, where you've thought, okay, I need to feel X amount of pain to see X amount of gain?
I have, to an extent, in which I've thought this is too easy. Maybe I need to do a lot more. Yeah. When in reality, you don't need to be training like really, really intensely all the time. Yeah. And this is why people have deload weeks. This is why people have, if you're doing, for example, 2 leg days a week, you might have 1 light day and 1 heavy day. This is why people do that, because your body can't work at that capacity all the time, because you're just going to drive yourself to injury.
Yeah.
What about you?
I think there's something that you've said in the past about how you don't make gains when you're in the gym, you make gains when you're resting. And I think that adds to your point about the importance of deload weeks and spacing out when you're working out. If you're training legs every single day, then you're just going to be putting yourself through more pain, and it's not actually effective to see the results that you want.
Exactly that.
Yeah.
Exactly that.
I think, again, it adds to the lack of enjoyment in going to the gym. If you're constantly in pain, this is the biggest reason why people don't stay consistent right from the very start, is because the pain they feel is so much so to the point where it's just too uncomfortable and they don't want to continue going to the gym.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Speaking of sweat.
Good. She's doing it. Oh my god, are you on the right part now?
Yeah, I've filled it up since as well.
Oh my god, go you.
It's so good, isn't it? This is not a sponsored post, but this bottle, I've never drunk as much water as when I've been using this.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Do you think it is because of the times?
Yeah, I think this is encouraging, seeing that there. It's also really comfortable to drink from. And so I don't think about how much, it doesn't feel like I'm drinking lots of water.
So it's just convenient, really.
Yeah. It's really cool as well.
It's cute. It's really cute.
And sorry, as in cool, like... it looks really nice, but I mean, it's kept cool, so the water is cold, and that's quite refreshing.
Oh my god, it is.
Yeah. I don't know if that's a design feature of the bottle, but I found that at least. And you can clearly see how much... you can clearly see how much water is in the bottle, so it's obvious how much you've drunk. It is really nice. I would highly recommend getting one of these if you're looking to drink more water.
I might get one.
Yeah.
Should I get one?
Yeah, get one.
So essentially, one of those will do.
Yeah, does you per day. So that's the idea of it. And it's really good. And it makes it look a lot easier than when you think of 2 litres, you think of probably a lot more than what it actually is, which is this. So,
easy.
Yeah. Get yourself one of these.
Based on everything we've said so far, what is your favourite method of tracking progress to this day?
I would say it's measuring my progress in terms of my performance, specifically my form with lifting a substantial amount of weight with a particular movement and exercise.
Okay, so you've drifted from the aesthetics and you've gone more to the progress kind of performance aspects in the gym.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. How long do you think that took to change?
It did take me a long time to realise this, because for a long time I wasn't performing in the gym as effectively as I could have been.
Okay.
And that changed very much in the last few years, because I met you and other people who are very accustomed to training, and I learned a lot from you guys. I don't quite know how long it took, but if I started in 2018 and it's now 2023, so it's taken me a while. Yeah.
But it's such a beautiful transition.
Yes, it is. And again, hopefully you can learn from our mistakes on this podcast, or learn from our journeys. So yeah, I mean, I'm glad I went through that, because it now gives me a story to tell to others. I'm glad I went through it. But yeah, if you can take anything from this podcast, it's to pay attention to the things that we now see as very important over a long period of time, so that it's quite justified, it's very real, that form is something you should consider first and foremost when you're doing any kind of exercise. Yeah.
That's amazing. That itself is a form of progress. Your switching progress is a form of progress.
The progress is the progress.
It is.
That's good. Yeah, it's a good point.
It's very true.
I really enjoy the fact that I am pushing myself more to challenge myself more now in terms of my performance, as opposed to before. I'm seeing a lot more results now because that's how I'm looking at it.
Yeah.
What would you say then is your favourite way of tracking progress now, and why?
I think through this podcast, I've realised how similar our journeys have been without actually realising.
Yeah.
Because I would say something quite similar.
Yeah.
It definitely is performance related. I think it is more now, like you said, the ability to lift more weight whilst maintaining a really good technique.
Yeah.
I think it's having the confidence to just go in there, try a new exercise that you've never tried before, and just, if you get it wrong, you get it wrong. Having that sense of comfort, in a sense, I think is really nice. And again, that's something that I would have never done before, because you're so apprehensive. And yeah, I think building that confidence is a big progress. I think through the performance of, for me at the minute, it's been very much on running and on HIIT, because that's something I never paid attention to.
Yeah.
I just lifted weights. And then I realised my stamina was actually quite bad.
Yeah.
And when I was training other people and I was putting them through these circuits, that I was thinking, I can never do that. I thought, surely I should be able to. So even being able to see that I can run for an extra 40 seconds without feeling like I'm going to throw up, that's a really good indicator for me.
Yeah. I think because you're so driven by your performance, you've been able to drastically improve that. And I can see that when you're in the gym and you're sprinting on the running machine.
I'm
and
literally dying.
You are, but you do so well at it. You do it for a really long time, what it seems like.
Feels like it. Feels like forever.
And I've seen you now in the gym for at least a year, and you've really transitioned recently because that's been your sole focus and drive. So yeah, I think there is some weight to what we're saying, really.
And I could actually very much say the same to you, not with the sprint, but with the squat especially, because I remember when you started squatting. I'm not trying to say you were awful, but it was interesting. And one of the biggest reasons was because in your neck and being uncomfortable with the bone.
Yeah.
And I remember you wouldn't squat with a bar unless it had blue roll on it. And if I just take the piss out of you, I'm like, what are you doing? And you're like, oh, but it hurts.
What she's referring to is the fact that I have a bone in my neck. It's quite common, actually, I think, that people have an extra bone in their neck. And I think I was always a little uncomfortable because of that, and holding the barbell on my back. It is quite an uncomfortable thing.
It is, especially when you're not used to it.
Yes, because it's very solid and you're not used to bearing so much weight on that part of your body unless you're doing a squat. Even a backpack, that's the most immediate weight I could think of, and that gets uncomfortable too. So yeah, it took me a long time to transition from having some kind of padding
and watching you scale across the past year as well, from not being able to even use the bar without the blue roll on it to now repping 80 odds, arse to grass, perfect depth for reps. I think that's insane.
Thank you.
And again, it's the same thing. You've focused on your form, you know, and you've upped the weight. You've done progressive overload, and again, I think it does really show that when you really want to focus on something specific, and you've taken away from I want to grow my legs, and you focus on I want to improve my squat. That's how you see the real progress.
Thank you. It means a lot to hear that from you. It really
It's
does.
true.
Yeah, and it just kind of reconfirms in my mind that what I've been doing has been working. And it's also given me the other benefits that I wanted to see at the start, but without me trying so hard to get them, or maybe misaligning my focus towards how I'm going to get those results.
Yeah.
I think maybe there's another thing we could add to all of this.
Tom.
And that's speaking to other people who are experienced. It's interesting to learn from others. I always think this, I always say this as well. Clearly so interested in hearing from other people. And so, yeah, it is a privilege to be able to have so much honesty from people who truly do care about you taking care of yourself. I think you're going to be in alignment with those people because you're all doing the same thing. You're all in the gym, you're working out, and you understand the importance of being healthy for the duration of that. So, yeah, it's really confidence filling to have somebody comment on your form and make pointers of how you can adapt that to better suit what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, it's about the community then, isn't it?
Yeah,
that I think that's something that again you never really anticipate when starting your journey. You're just looking at yourself and what's going to happen, but it's so much more than just changing your body. It's the people you meet and it's the potential you unlock. And I think that is amazing.
I think that's a form of progress in itself, is showing the kind of people that you attract.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely. On that, 100%. But yeah.
Thank you so much for listening to our podcast. We hope you've enjoyed this episode on tracking progress.
We appreciate you guys so much. Thank you so much for all the love and support we've been given. We could not be doing this without you guys. If you guys have any questions or there's anything that you want to share, feel free to send us a message on Instagram or on YouTube or on Spotify.
You have been listening to Gains and Gossip.